If you're in a market where sports betting has been legalized, there's no way to hide from it. The ads are ubiquitous. They become a top category in spot TV, routinely cited by CEOs in earnings calls as a kind of manna from heaven to step in where automotive's woes continue. Last month, the TVB released a new sports betting survey whose aim was to discover how sports betting companies like DraftKings and FanDuel and others are reaching potential bettors, and to identify the importance of media platforms in influencing online sports bettors' decisions. I'm Michael Depp, editor of TVNewsCheck, and this is Talking TV, the podcast that brings you smart conversations about the business of broadcasting. This week, that conversation will wend into the details of sports betting, and I'll be joined by Hadassah Gerber, Chief Research Officer for TVB. We'll talk about what the survey found and what broadcasters can expect from a category that has become so crucial for the spot advertising mix. We'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back, Hadassah Gerber, to Talking TV.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Hadassah, how big of a category is sports betting for local TV? Give us a sense of the size and scope of this market.
Well, if you're talking about sports betting in general, there were close to 53 billion wagers done in 2021. That's according to Morning Consult. And they said that that was double the year before. When it comes to ad spending, it's 1.6 billion overall, with the largest share of that going to television. For local TV, we looked at the top 10 in Kantar in spending, overall, all spending, all 13 media. And out of all media, television itself was 84%, local television was 52% of all spending. So it is really a very important category now for local television.
That barely existed just a few years ago.
Barely existed just a few years ago. And there's something else to keep in mind, because when people talk about the category and they say, well, now there are 30 states that allow sports betting, but it's not all online. It's not all for the DraftKings and the FanDuels of the world. When you really look at those where it's accessible, because some of them is only in the casinos, or they have restrictions for online. So you're talking about 19 states. So it is certainly a local platform to zero in on those states.
Right. So a lot of bets, a lot of money. You conducted this survey, as I said, released it last month. What was the most important takeaway do you find from it?
Oh, there were several takeaways. So first, let's talk about who bets. I mean, 2/3 of them are men, 1/3 of them are females. It certainly skews younger. When it comes to income, though, the highest indexing segments are 50 to 150. 150 and above household income under indexes. And then you have the under 50, which under index too, but it's like in the 90s. So it's not a totally a rich man's sport. It is more.
It sounds like a middle class sport.
Yeah, every man's sport.
Yeah.
So that, to me, that was kind of surprising. And we also asked which were the most important media platforms for their awareness, for the consideration, than actually placing a bet. And television really dominated. I mean, everything else was in the teens, and then you had television, which was for awareness was very high. For all of them, it was high. So we've seen that in other categories, but there was another surprising take from this. We asked the question, what do you do after you see a television ad? Do you take some kind of action? And normally there's a good response to that, but for this category, the numbers went up to 96% of those who saw or heard an ad online for sports betting took some kind of actions. 46% after they heard the ad opened a sports betting account online. 42% actually placed a bet. We have not seen this kind of response from any of our other categories. I mean, it's been good, but this is really quite exceptional.
Well, what do you make of that? What is it, because they're watching TV, they're watching sports on TV, maybe
Yes,
as
we asked that question as well. Are they watching sports that they're betting on, the games that they're betting on? And they are.
yeah.
So, I mean, it impacts everything. And also these are people that have a facility with online.
Mhm.
So we asked the question, when you do online search for sports betting or apps, have TV ads influence your search selections? 95% said, of those who did searches, said yes, it influenced their search selections. But there was another, to me, interesting response when we asked the question, do you watch local TV news, not television, but local TV news? And we had 83% that said yes. And those who use local TV websites or apps, 72% said yes. So you might think, because this is a category that skews younger, that all the other questions that we asked, do they plan to increase their spending? You might think that those who watch local TV news or those who use the apps might under-index, but that really wasn't the case. If anything, they had a higher percentage. So 47% said they were going to increase their sports betting in the next 12 months. And when you take a look of those who looked at local news, that number went up to 50%. And for those who use the apps, the number went up to 55%. And the same thing for in-game betting. There were higher numbers for those who watch local TV news and for those who use the apps. So that was
there's a remarkable
really
efficacy.
finding.
TV advertising is particularly potent because in my market, where it just became legal in the last year, within the last year, it's ubiquitous on buses, billboards, out of home, all sorts of categories, radio, and of course also television. So it's interesting that the TV has been so potent. Among the surprises then, anything stand out? The 1/3 of women being bettors here, is that a surprise? Is that smaller or larger than you expected?
I think that's about what we expected. And then when we asked them about certain other factors, of course, the males bet more frequently than the females. So it does skew male in many ways, not only as far as the percentage that responded to the survey, but also their actions that they take. Mm-hmm. And we went into, just to give you the timing of this, we went into 13 states where sports betting is currently legal. We went into Arizona, Colorado, Connecticut, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Michigan, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, and Wyoming. New York State, when we were planning for this, had not yet confirmed exactly when they were going to go out, so they weren't included. And we went out January 6th through the 17th. So as you know, there's a lot of sports that are going on during that time. You have the NFL, you have the NCAA college football, NBA, NHL, and college basketball. So it was a good time to go out. So
you have DraftKings, you have FanDuel dominating this category among the advertisers. How big is the field? Who else is out there buying up TV advertising?
So we went into and looked at the top 10 spenders. So you have DraftKings, and this is for total spending, and FanDuel. They represent 2/3 of the top 10 spending. And then
Wow.
after that, you have Caesars, and Caesars, then the top 3 represented 80%. So they really are the major ones in the market. You also have BetMGM, and then Bet Rivers, and after that, Golden Nugget. But they do not spend anywhere near that amount. But most of their spending is in local television. The smaller ones, their spending is definitely in local television. They don't bother with a lot of the other media platforms.
Interesting. So there's a kind of life cycle to sports betting in a market, isn't there? I mean, there's the laying down the foundations in the market before it's actually available and legal. And then what happens?
Okay, so then you have to sustain it. And you have to make sure that they don't go elsewhere. So yeah, that's very, very interesting question that we asked. We asked, are you open to looking at promotions from other sports bettings? And we found that only 6% said, nope, I'm not interested. I'm not likely at all. Which means the other 94%, whether they said, well, it depends on the offer, or 40% said, yes, very likely. But they're constantly now vulnerable. They could go to other sports betting platforms if the promotion is good enough for there, or if they pull out of advertising. So it is really, really critical to keep up with advertising in this particular category.
That's really interesting. So once sports betting becomes legal and entrenched in a market, the advertisers can't really back off. They've got to worry about the competition nipping at their heels.
Yeah, they have to sustain it. When they come in, they go in with a big splash because they want to make sure everybody knows that they're a player and they want to be selected. And so they do spend a lot of money going in. But then afterwards, you have to maintain it. And also you want the frequency of the betting to be sustained.
Because you can bet down to the tiniest increment in any given game. You can bet on almost anything as the game is unfolding.
Well, another interesting finding was 2/3 bet at least once a week. We said, have you bet online in the last 2 months? So we had 12% who said they bet every day. And you had 27% who said they bet several times a week. And then another 27% who said they bet once a week. That's 2/3 of the bettors bet at least once a week.
Did you follow up with those bettors and ask them the size of the bets that they're laying? Any sense of how much money they're putting down in with this frequency?
We did not ask them those questions in this survey. We did not.
I wonder how big those bets are. If we're talking very micro bets, or if they start to escalate, what the life cycle is for the bettor, and how soon it is until his wife kills him.
That's or maybe the wife doesn't even know. Well, whatever. And then you have also placing sports bets in game,
right,
which is really big.
Yeah.
Really, really will become bigger. And among those who, and it was even more important to those who watch local TV news and those who have local TV news websites and apps. So that's also going to be very important because, as you know, in Europe, that most of the betting is placed in game.
Right, where it's more impulsive too. So I'm interested in the longevity of this category. I mean, what do you know? What insights did the survey give you, if any, as to the potential longevity of the category for television? Because now it's kind of almost a new dependence in some ways, replacing automotive.
Well, so when we asked them, do you plan to increase? We didn't go past, no one knows what they're going to do past year. The question was, in the next 12 months, do you plan to increase the amount of spending? Well, it was increase, decrease, and maintain the amount of spending, sports betting online. And so for adults, it was 47% said that they planned to increase. As I said, women, it was lower, it was 42%. Men, it was 50%. And then men 21 to 34 and 35 to 54. It's a younger sport, was 53% and 52% respectively. So certainly there's going to be a lot of increase in online sports betting, and that's within the markets that already have online sports betting.
Right.
Of course, there are some states that will never do online sports betting. Texas is not going to do it. Utah is not going to do it. Florida, it's dependent on the politics that's going on in Florida, of when and if they will do it and how they will do it. But right now, it's a really strong category for almost every advertiser, but particularly for local television.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So any last takeaways you'd want to emphasize from the survey?
People have multiple sports betting accounts, and they bet frequently. So advertising needs to stay in place to make sure that you are part of the competitive consideration set, that they stay with you. Just because they sign up with you doesn't mean they're going to place sports bets on you. So they could have an account, but they may not be an active user of that account. So I think advertising will be very, very critical in this category to maintain the spending that the individual bettor does on an account and not to be taken away by their competition.
So the account executives at television stations can't put their feet up on their desk on this too. They've got to stay sharp, stay communicative.
Well, they always have to stay sharp.
True. No complacency allowed for sports betting just because it's a windfall right now. Well, Hadassah, thanks for the intel on a very important category, what has become a very important category for local television. Thanks a lot for being here this week.
Thank you.
And thanks to all of you for watching and listening, and we'll see you next time. A new episode of Talking TV is available most Fridays on TVNewsCheck.com. You can also listen and subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, and Spotify.